So, Alex, how'd you get into the film world, personally?
Well,
Not your YTMCU, but like just you on a personal level.
well, I always feel like the artistic expression that film has is kind of the way that I expressed myself when I was really young. I always found myself, looking at films and being like, "This is the kind of thing that I truly know about, that I really like."
Yeah. So it just kind of like it was like natural to you.
Mm.
Yeah,
What kind of films inspired you when you were younger to kind of get into that world?
I think movies like 300 definitely.
So you're a Zack Snyder fan?
I wouldn't say entirely. I do like some of his films, but not necessarily all of his films.
What do you feel about the Snyder Cut?
I mean, it's cool. It's super long.
Yeah,
I like the art style and everything, but
yeah,
it's not something I'd watch more than twice.
right.
Yeah.
I had to watch it like 3 times for the video that
No,
I made on
not
it.
only did Jeffrey watch the original version, but he also watched the black and white version for some
I
reason.
did watch the black and white version because I wanted to.
So I
So,
don't understand.
like not to make it about me. I'll change the subject in a second, but um, like I don't know. I felt like in order to like actually talk about the black and white version, I actually needed to see it, and it really does add nothing to the movie. Like I absolutely love black and white in modern day cinema, and I talked about that in the video. Like I talked about how Psycho could have been black and white, but it's I meant how Psycho could have been in color, but it's in black and white to kind of add to the dingy, kind of creepy aspect to the film. And then I talked about how David Lynch's Elephant Man could have been in color, but it's in black and white to immerse you in the time period. And I talked about how The Lighthouse could have been in color, but it kind of mixes the reasons of both films. But yeah, the Snyder Cut didn't really have a reason to be black and white. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's the case for almost every single movie, but like you said, sometimes it adds to it. Like this new the Christopher Nolan movie that's coming out, I think July next year.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah, Oppenheimer.
Yeah,
About the nukes and all that stuff. I mean, that makes
yeah,
sense. It's kind of strange how there aren't a whole lot of timepieces that are in black and white because you'd expect
yeah,
that. Instead, it's like artsy, like college student, films.
right.
But
So, Alex, what so you're a Moon Knight fan. I mean, it's just a wild guess, But
I wonder where you came up
uh
with that conclusion.
yeah, I just got a vibe, But so what attracts you to Moon Knight? Like what about the character that made you think, "All right, I want to tell a story about this character?"
Well, it's actually it's kind of a personal reasoning, which
Okay.
I'm totally fine with explaining. So I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay.
But the character of Moon Knight has always shown a struggle. The
Uh-huh.
character has always had an aspect that I feel the character's isolation, not only to protect others, but to protect his own mind.
Mhm.
I feel like that's something a lot of characters don't get. And like with the MCU per se, you don't have a single other character who has any quality like that whatsoever.
Right.
And I like the DID part of him, of course, because that's where the struggle comes from.
Yeah.
And I feel like the backstory of Mark Spector and what happens to him over time is just something really interesting to watch unfold.
Mhm. Now, how do you feel like that Disney has been handling his character in the series so far? Have you been keeping up with the series at all?
I've watched episode 1 and 2, haven't watched 3 yet though.
Mhm. So far, what do you think of it?
Actually, at first I was thinking to myself, this is going to be terrible because
Right.
it's Disney. I can't
Yeah,
trust
yeah,
them
yeah.
with my baby boy.
Right. Yeah.
But after the first episode, I was like, okay, this is actually pretty decent. I'm liking
Mhm.
this a lot. And then
So, my bad. Go ahead.
episode 2 comes out, and they start showing off more of the action sequences, more of the characters of Steven and Mark together.
Oh, so you
Right.
thought it
And I'm
was
like,
better than the first one?
I definitely feel like from a comic book type standpoint, episode 2 is better.
I
Mm.
mean,
But
I think I could get what you mean. It's just, I don't know. I think episode 1, it kind of felt like it was something new, and episode 2 kind of felt like they were just falling back into the formula. You know what I mean? Which is like fine. Like I'm not saying that I disliked episode 2. It's just like from what episode 1 was, this fresh new thing that kind of like left the audience guessing a lot of the time. It kind of felt more predictable in the second episode. Although there were cool moments like the whole sequence in the museum. I thought that was pretty awesome, but
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. I mean, I can get what you mean. I haven't read any of the comics, so like I'm kind of
Yeah, I know little to nothing about the Moon Knight character. So I'm looking at this show from a totally fresh perspective. I know the bare minimum. In fact, most of what I know about the Moon Knight character is from your films. So
I'm sorry.
no, it's cool. So speaking of which, so let's see here. I'm trying to think. You made Moon Knight Chapter 1 how many years ago now?
I believe 2019 was what
Okay.
it first came out.
So from 2019, was your intention to always have Moon Knight Chapter 1 be the start of a fan-made cinematic universe?
Well, originally, I think I just wanted it to be like a one-off.
Mhm.
But after I had been reading more comics and realizing that the first one was just really fun to do, and I wanted to show off more characters that I liked. And so then I've created scripts for The Winter Soldier and for Iron Fist, Shang-Chi. And once those two came out, I was like, okay, maybe there could be a way where I could continue this and put all these characters kind of together.
Right.
So what exactly is your process when you make one of your films? Because for us personally, we kind of write the script and then we spend like a few months just talking about making it, and then we like dedicate a few weekends to film it. What is your process? Is it more like write without getting anybody involved, or is it having people involved day one? Like, what is your like steps to getting a final product?
I think when it comes to writing it, it all depends on the story. Because, for example, I'll write the script for, say, the Flip the Coin Deadpool film, which everyone was involved with because at the start, we didn't know what to do. It was just kind of very directionless. But we knew that we didn't want it to be like a super serious film or something that was just kind of generic. We wanted it to be something with a lot of humor because, of course, Deadpool, but have the style of the other characters coming in.
Yeah.
But for something like Dragon and Tiger 3, which is coming out this year sometime, depending on the factors of what's happening with the characters, sometimes I'll give away these liberties. For example, I did not even write Dragon and Tiger 3. Brady actually wrote the entire film because since he's Iron Fist and he's been really into it ever since he joined. He was like, yo, you should let me write the third part because I have a really cool story in mind. And I was like, you know what? Go for it.
Yeah, is that ever like a struggle? Because like, you know, it's like your baby. You created the YTMCU. Like to like give over those type of liberties in such a, you know, significant way. Somebody's writing one of your movies. Is that like ever a difficult thing you have to deal with? Like giving up control?
I feel like yes, sometimes I do worry because while I do trust everyone in the films, of course, because if I didn't, they wouldn't be part of them. But some people don't really understand what the films are about, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like me and Jeffrey are relatively lucky because both of us know a decent amount about film and we have a pretty good partnership. But I've always like, you know, worried like if we did bring in somebody else into, you know, our production, would it be difficult to give that up? And I've always just been curious, you know, is that like ever a common, you know, struggle? But you know, so do you think that Brady is, you know, a competent writer when it comes to the script so far, or is it a dumb script?
Oh no, absolutely, it's a fantastic script.
Well, that's good to hear.
So, all right. So, oh, crap. I do this quite a bit where like I have a really cool question and then I totally forget it.
It happens.
It's called having autism. So, but no. So you are a senior, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, I'm assuming that you're planning on going to college
Yes, 2 years.
in 2 years. Okay. So, do you have like a quote unquote end game kind of finisher for the YTMCU? Like, obviously, you don't have to like give any details or anything like that. But like, do you have any idea on how to like put this to bed?
I do have the entirety of the YTMCU, all the films that are coming out to end it all. I have them all pretty much done.
That's cool.
There's like 3 or 4. There's actually not that many left with the time frame that I have.
Right.
Are they features or are they shorts? Or is it a combination?
They'll probably all at least be over an hour each.
Mm.
So a lot of your films, especially like when it started out, your films were like 15 to 20 minutes.
I think the
but
first
then
one was 30 minutes. That was Moonlight, or 25 minutes. Yeah.
I think it was 29.
Mm.
But as the films have progressed, they've gotten longer. With I believe Chapter 3 being a little over 2 hours long, which is
minutes,
longer.
Right?
I think it's 2 hours 13 minutes.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
It's a lengthy movie when it comes
Something
to
like
a
that.
YouTube film. You don't.
Yeah,
You don't
but like
normally see
even a regular film, I mean, most films average around hour and 30 minutes to 2 hours, and you kind of exceeded that a little bit. So as that being your first like average length of a feature film, what would you say is like your biggest your biggest problem when it comes to that? Or your greatest challenge, I should say, when it comes like pacing or writing or anything like that?
Definitely trying to fit the entire story in such a long runtime.
Mm-hmm.
Because with it being the final film, I had a lot of things that I needed to put to rest.
Right. Did you intend it to be that long?
I knew I wanted it to be that long.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's totally cool. I knew from the start that I wanted it to be the length of an hour, like a full movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because this being the final chapter, the final solo film, which Moon Knight has, which is like the character I've been making films for God knows how long now.
Yeah.
I knew that I wanted to end it with everything that the character had been going through had some kind of answer.
Right.
Like, for example, we had both the Sun King and Bushman come into the final act.
Mm-hmm.
Because then that's a whole 2 villains. We get to understand Mark's new struggle with dealing with the same threat he's dealt with before, and having an entirely new one thrust upon him. And
no, go ahead. I thought you were done. My bad.
Sorry, I talk too much.
No, you're good. Hey, this is the perfect format for that. Yeah, it's
It's
perfect,
a perfect
man.
place for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Before
I
we
didn't think
move
about
on,
that. So
before we move on to the YTMCU stuff, I want to ask the more personal question. Is this the end when it comes to your film career? Is the YTMCU where it stops, or do you plan on doing more, things related to the film world?
it's more or less just a hobby for me. I don't think my life is going to go any further with filmmaking or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of the end of the road.
So you don't find yourself, wanting to make a non-Marvel related film or anything like that. It's just like you wanted to, make a fan film for something you have a passion for, and when you finish, which is, I guess it's kind of like a time capsule, I suppose, for your life as well, for your young adulthood. But you don't think that you'll ever take another crack at it?
Honestly, I probably could in the future. It just depends on what we'd be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
I've always brought up the idea to the group of, say, 10 years from now, we get a YTMCU group up, and we just make one last big film with all of us now 10 years older.
Yeah, who knows?
That'd be pretty cool.
If you did that in 10 years, Disney would be so big that if you did that, they'd kill you all. They'd be like,
Honestly.
this is our stuff. Copyright has gone too far.
You have these armed soldiers, and the badge is Mickey Mouse or something like that.
They're making fan films. Kill them. I think it's a fair way to do it. It's a weird Orwellian future that I've just constructed. But all right, we're gonna take a quick little break, and then we're gonna go into some more YTMCU stuff. So yeah. And we are back. So, could you just like quickly take us through the chronological, story of how the YTMCU came to be, and sort of like a brief summary of how you're wanting to end it, I guess, which we've kind of already did to an extent, but I mean more of like a specific, like, going movie to movie, just like a brief thing, not something super in depth.
So we start off with Moon Knight Chapter 1, the beginning of everything.
Yeah.
So I essentially made that one just as a test to see how much I could do with the character, how much I could understand the character, and to test out my filmmaking abilities, essentially.
Mm-hmm. So it was just kind of like a primer for your future projects, sort of.
Yes, that's pretty much a great way to describe it.
It's pretty smart. I wish we would have done that for the coffee shop.
Yeah.
I think about these films way too much.
Yeah, it's kind of hard not to think about something you spend, that long on making.
Right. Yeah. It's. I think most filmmakers do that, to be honest.
Yeah, it's almost impossible not to. So after Moon Knight, what was it? Was it the Secret Avengers, or was there?
I think it was Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier. Yeah.
After
Secret Avengers is way further down.
Yeah. Then we have Winter Soldier, which to be fair was kind of a train wreck.
I mean, that's kind of for it being such an early film, it's sort of expected.
You can't expect perfection so early into the game.
Yeah. So
I mean, the MCU's second film was The Incredible Hulk.
That film kind of felt like there was a lot more. I might be wrong, but there was a lot more collaboration. Is that to an extent true? Because it just felt like there was more people involved.
There was definitely a lot more main roles being explored with other people.
Yeah.
Because I knew I didn't want to take the front seat in this one, because I wanted other people in the group to get their time to shine.
Yeah, so how exactly did you, acquire the somewhat large cast you've, assembled over the few years? How is it just like people you've known already, or is it, more like you recruit them from online? What was your process for that?
Pretty much everyone in the YTMC are people I've been friends with.
Mm. And so you just, at school, like, hey, you want to be in this superhero movie I'm making? Was it, a little more, less professional, more just like this is for fun? Because obviously, you've gotten to a point to where, this is more, like, it's more consistent. But, like, at that point, was it just for fun, or was it, like, are we taking it seriously?
Well, in the beginning, it was just kind of a fun thing that I was doing with the boys. But once we started making these films and everyone was like, yo, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then it was all kind of piecing it together. I was like, you know what? Let's actually, like, try to make something cool. And everyone was like, you know what? We're down.
Which film did you realize that? Like, at which point were you like, yeah, let's take this a little bit more seriously?
I feel like at the end of the first Dragon and Tiger film, after watching everything, I was like, you know what? This has some really big potential. And then Moon Knight 2, of course, came along, which was a whole different thing from the other three, what it felt like.
Yeah.
So the climax for Moon Knight Chapter 2, you shot that at a parking garage, right?
Yes.
So, and, was that tough to do? Because that's more of a public area compared to everywhere else where you've shot.
I mean, to be fair, it wasn't really, because it was super late. Nobody was out, so we just went in there and did our thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sick location for sure. Definitely a good place to have a climax for a movie. We skipped over Dragon and Tiger. So after Winter Soldier, do you feel like you learned more from it, since you yourself consider it like a quote unquote train wreck? Did you apply anything that you learned from that into your next film?
Yes, absolutely.
So
there was.
Go ahead.
There was 3 or 4 main struggles with Winter Soldier that I saw myself fixing in the next chapter. For one, the way the film looked was kind of gross. There was way too many filters I put on it. It did not look great.
Yeah. So
The second I definitely feel like was our film schedule, because for the Winter Soldier film, we had filmed it 3 times, and we had not used the footage from 2 of those days. So essentially, what we had was a day's worth of footage that was made in about 4 hours.
It's just like a rush production, kind of. Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the script I had made was like really interesting, and I had all these, plot elements I was going to put through, but it just came out way too quickly. And then having all these unexperienced actors as well, and then my negligence on the part of it looking terrible. It just was not good.
Yeah.
Was it intended to be as short as it was?
No, it was supposed to be around half an hour, but you saw how that goes.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about Winter Soldier, right? Or are we on?
Yeah, I'm talking about Winter Soldier. Because Winter Soldier, I'm looking at your page right now. It's 16 minutes and 43 minutes. And I was just, with that explanation, I was just curious if that's why it's shorter compared to your other, how I describe like main films.
Yeah, it was definitely not supposed to be that short, but it ended up that way.
So all right, Dragon and Tiger. So you're dealing with Iron Fist and Shang-Chi. One question that I do have, and one thing I find interesting is that like a lot of these characters that you tackle have been tackled before the MCU. So, for example, Shang-Chi, and I don't know if you could count Iron Fist, but I guess technically Iron Fist hasn't been touched yet by the MCU, as well as several other characters. So before you actually get into the film, I'm just curious, like, is it kind of cool for you to think, like, wow, I tackled this before the MCU even did, and how do you feel like your versions of the character are, I'm sorry if I pronounced this wrong, but differentiate from the MCU version?
There's one thing I actually think about a lot is I made 3 Moon Knight films before they made 1 episode of a show.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is Disney stole it from you.
We joke about that all the time.
The good old reversal.
See, there's my intellectual property. What now?
I don't know how far
but,
the
yeah,
would go. I'll be honest.
It's definitely something we joke about all the time. Is
right.
Whenever we sit down to make a film, I never really think about it, but all these characters that we make films for that I like are like non-MCU characters.
Yeah.
And I think that's half the enjoyment of it, is that it's something you haven't seen yet on the big screen.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure that kind of makes it easier in a way, because like, so I mean, just like, for example, like, you've tackled Spider-Man before. Spider-Man has been tackled multiple times, not only in film but also in TV shows and whatnot, and several times in Into the Spider-Verse. So I'm sure having your interpretation of Spider-Man is very different. Like when it comes to like pressure, because everybody has their idea of Spider-Man, and he's one of the top 3 most recognizable superheroes. But look at Shang-Chi. You did Shang-Chi, I think, before the film even got announced, if I remember correctly.
That's true.
So, I mean, I'm sure that was like a whole lot less pressure, because Shang-Chi wasn't even a well-known character until the film came out.
Yeah, because I'm looking at a character like Moon Knight, Iron Fist, Shang-Chi, and I'm like, nobody really knows who this character is unless they're like a die-hard fan.
Right.
So me making these films about them, it's definitely more enjoyable when I don't have a whole bunch of people saying, this is how they should be because the movie was like this. Because they've never even heard of them.
Yeah.
Have you had trouble with that, with characters that have been heavily adapted?
I wouldn't really say that much. The most I've got criticisms for was probably actually Deadpool. Mm-hmm. Because people were like, he's not the way he is in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how anybody would expect that. That's just crazy. Because it's like, Deadpool.
Ryan
probably had,
Only
Reynolds.
one,
like,
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds really made that character his.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
But,
not just performance wise, but also production wise. I mean, I don't know how.
yeah, true.
They had like
Yeah.
a $100 million budget to make that movie, or well, probably
Yeah.
Yeah.
How am I supposed
three
to?
of
How
them
am I
now.
supposed to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, really. I mean, honestly, I would fight for that movie as well. X-Men. I mean, because that was a train wreck. Jeez.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah. But go into Dragon and Tiger. Like that film.
This film, I feel like, was definitely a shot in the dark almost, because I didn't really know how to make Iron Fist happen without having all the materials to do so. Because, of
Mhm.
course, characters deep rooted in Asian culture, dragons and shit. And I
Right.
have no idea how to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So a majority of the scenes explaining the origin of Iron Fist, like his Asian roots, are kind of just hearsay because, of course, I don't have the faculties to show that happening.
Right.
Which I find that to be half the reason why I didn't like that one as much as I liked other films. I find it hard to like something when the full story is not there.
Right.
'Cause
Well,
like
the
with-
Netflix version. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, because like with Moon Knight, I was able to show off his death and resurrection decently well, because of course I had the Khonshu suit and I had plenty of area to do so. But with the dragon Shao Lao being hit by Iron Fist and giving him his power, that's not something I can really pull off.
Right.
And
Well,
if
the
you did,
Netflix
then
show.
it would not be. It'd be almost impossible to truly
Oh, yeah.
understand from like a fan standpoint.
Yeah, it would
Right.
look really weird.
It would not look the best.
That's true.
Yeah. But the Netflix shows kind of tackled it in a grounded way. So, I mean, I guess it's like not entirely impossible, although Iron Fist, like the show, sucked.
Yeah.
But in Defenders, I think the Defenders is all right. But anyways, so also just a random question. What was like the leading force behind making Iron Fist like all right. So rather than making an Iron Fist movie and a Shang-Chi movie, you just combine them together. Like, what was the idea behind that?
Well, over the years in the comics, that I've always been like a pretty big Iron Fist fan,
Mhm.
and I had noticed that in a lot of his comics, he did a lot of team ups with Shang-Chi, and I looked into the character's background, and I was like, hey, these characters are like super similar without even like knowing it, and so I took in the dichotomy between them in the comics, and then I looked at their origin stories, and I said, I don't have Luke Cage, so I could put Shang-Chi and Iron Fist together and see how that goes. Because I feel like having two, characters rooted in martial arts, both of Asian culture, could make a significantly more interesting story.
Right.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you said a little bit that someone else directed that one?
We partially had some people stepping in on it, like Dalton and Caleb, who was Iron Fist at the time, had inputted some scenes in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's
But
just
that's-
more of a collaborative, director chair type of thing, which is
Yeah.
pretty common when it comes to amateur films, because it's easier when you have a more collaborative thing for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah, I find it to be super difficult when I'm the only one who's making the entire thing.
yeah.
Hmm.
So overall, what was the experience of making Dragon and Tiger? Because we also got to move on, because you had there's about to be 12 MCU movies, so we have a couple.
Yeah,
more to cover.
Daredevil hasn't even came out yet.
Yeah. so just to kind of wrap up the Dragon and Tiger, what's your as the creator of it? How do you look upon that film? And like, are you happy with the way it turned out for the most part?
I think it's a pretty good stepping stone, because I got to use the colorful aesthetic of these characters.
Yeah.
Whereas, you see in Winter Soldier and Moon Knight, they're both kind of like dingy, damp, dark. Whereas with this one, I could express the color of the Iron Fist suits, the Shang-Chi, like their abilities, and then the aesthetic of using martial arts and like rap music, which I found to be something pretty cool, since Iron Fist had a somewhat street fighting background.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So to move on to the next film, which is Moon Knight Chapter 2, It's a pretty lengthy film, I believe. Yeah, it was your longest film to
53
date.
minutes.
Yeah, so almost an hour long. Getting to the I mean, it's technically, if you would have submitted that to a film festival, that would be considered a feature. So, how was making a 53-minute video or movie rather different from making a 16-minute long movie? Is it significant, do you think, or is it just like you film for longer periods of time?
I absolutely believe the time change is significant.
Mm.
Because you have more time to fit in the story, and you have to compensate for the length of it by kind of spreading it out, which I felt like for Moon Knight 2 was easy because it was a more deep story. So I was able to kind of spread things out and show the slow descent.
Mm-hmm. So, what was the process of writing? Was it just you, or is it like, since this is your, at this point, fourth movie, was it more of a collaboration when it comes to writing?
For Moon Knight 2, I had rewritten the script about 6 times. I was the only one to have written anything. But I had spent a lot of time making it because I knew I was very proud of the first 3, and this is where we had started to hit the point where, like, okay, we want to get serious with it. So I had written this one a whole bunch of times just to find out what really stuck.
Yeah, I do a similar thing with my writing. I'm on I think the 6th draft of my short film that I'm writing right now, and what I do is when I feel like I'm either getting stuck or something could be better, I just completely restart. So I just have by the end of it, I probably have like 15 different drafts. Which it's ineffective, but it's also effective, I think.
Yeah.
So you felt like you told the story you want to tell with chapter 2, right?
Yeah, because it wasn't the whole story, but it was the midpoint of the story where we really got to understand, this is how Mark processes these events happening, and this is how he, overcomes it, so then he could defeat the ultimate threat, which being Bushman, and how he overcomes these odds at the end of the story.
Yeah. So to move on to the next film, Dragon and Tiger 2, Heroes for Hire.
Wait, no, it's Secret Avengers.
Are you sure? Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Secret Avengers.
Yeah.
So there was a recast, right, for what's his name?
Iron Fist.
Iron Fist, yeah.
Yes.
Was that for the first film, or was that during Secret Avengers?
We actually had filmed all the scenes we needed with him, but at the last moment we had to recast with Brady and then start pretty much everything over again.
Yeah. So how was that situation? Was it like, oh crap, here goes the entire film, or was it more of just like, oh well, since it is a no budget film, it's not that the stakes aren't as high, but still.
Well, we had found ourselves in a time crunch, essentially, because we had a date planned and everything for this, and at the last moment, the Iron Fist actor pulled out. So then Brady had came in, and we said, okay, how are we going to be able to redo all of this without extending our date?
Yeah, which it sounds like it ended up being a positive because you got somebody who's now writing one of your
writing the third, yeah.
So it ended up not being too bad, but still, it must have been pretty stressful to lose your guy right near the end of your production. But
yeah, I definitely feel like getting Brady was a much needed good choice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was also the first film that broke an hour. Was that intentional?
Actually, I didn't plan for it to be that long. I was only supposed to be around 45 minutes, but it ended up being longer, and I'm kind of glad it did because we got to show off more of the characters and what they could do and how they interacted with each other.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff
speaking of that,
in that hour as well. Like, it feels like a very packed film, which is, I think a positive when it comes to, a fan film, right, which is kind of what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have, so before Secret Avengers, you have Moon Knight, Winter Soldier, Dragon and Tiger, and Moon Knight Chapter 2.
Yes.
How did you get the story of all 4 of those films, and bring the characters and all of their arcs and all their stories, bringing that into Secret Avengers? And one thing that's like really necessary when it comes to team up when it comes to team ups in like comic book films and just comic books in general is how characters interact with each other. Because like with comic books and especially comic book films now, what ifism is like kind of played on a lot. You know, like what if Batman met, you know, whatever obscure character, like how they interact, how would they? So like, how did you I don't know, kind of put that onto screen?
It was definitely a complicated process because we have all these different characters. Like none of them are similar at all. Because you have Moon Knight, who's like dark, very emotionally detached from people, very violent, and then you have Bucky, who at first was kind of the same way, but with the way we shot our story, with the death of Captain America and Bucky being like, okay, I need to step in the shoes of Captain America and be a better person. We now have someone who's trying to be, you know, morally just and self-righteous.
Right.
And then you have Danny and Shang, who are just dudes trying to, you know, make a living and do, you know, crime fighting stuff because that's what they know how to do.
Right.
Yeah.
And shoving them all together was kind of difficult because you have, you know, a murderous psychopath essentially, two dudes who know martial arts, and a government agent who is stepping in the shoes of a dead friend.
Yeah, one thing that I thought was really interesting was that you'd think because Moon Knight was kind of the driving force of the cinematic universe, like he's the one who started it. I thought that it was interesting to have the Winter Soldier kind of be the leader, because Moon Knight, if I'm remembering correctly, he's in the story a good bit, but he's not really the main character. The Winter Soldier is the main character.
Yes.
So I mean, I thought that was a really interesting direction. So, but now let me think here. I could be wrong, but don't you have like other Marvel heroes in that movie? But like not the actual version, like Android, that right?
Yeah.
So what was the idea behind, like, what made you think, all right, I want Black Panther and what, Thor and Spider-Man? Like, what Spider-Man not be in it, but like, what was your idea? Like, I mean, it's canon that all those, the real versions of those characters are in it. So what was your idea with robots? But also, would you like ever want to further explore some of the bigger characters?
I feel like I was gonna make a Spider-Man movie at one point, but that kind of fell through. We were gonna film about the X-Men at one point as well, which didn't work out. But I know characters like Thor or Cap or Iron Man, any of the main like Avenger characters.
Right.
They were never really planned to go through.
Which would be like almost impossible to do with no budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Spider-Man. I mean, Spider-Man, it's probably for the best that you guys didn't attempt that, because that would have been a very, very tall task.
Yeah.
To put it lightly.
I feel like it's not that it would have like, I don't really try to do things that I know are beyond my limitations. So I know that it wouldn't have been like, you ugly CGI web Spider-Man swinging on a green screen, but more of would have been like, yes, Spider-Man just walked to this place.
Right.
Yeah. Which the green screen idea could have been hilarious, though.
Oh,
it's just
like,
that would have been funny. He's just like hanging over a green screen and freaking out. But
right.
Still, yeah.
Have you heard
I
about?
figured that would not have been the best idea.
Yeah. Have you heard about Spider-Man Lotus? Have you heard about that?
I think I have actually.
So it is a Spider-Man fan film that is, well, I'm reading the description of it right now. Non-profit, a psychological study of Peter Parker as he's confronted by the guilt of his past. So I've actually, the Indiegogo's up right now. I've actually donated some money to it, but I mean, you're talking about like, you know, fan films and stuff. Like this dude has raised a little over $100,000 to do a Spider-Man film. So yeah, I mean, I don't, and that's a fan film and it's non-profit. So yeah, I really don't blame you for not tackling Spider-Man.
Yeah,
but
I think that's even then $100,000 for a Spider-Man film, that still sounds pretty tough. Like to pull it off properly.
I'm excited to see it. I wonder. I'm curious to see how he's going to pull it off. But yeah. So the next film is Dragon and Tiger 2: Heroes for Hire. and this one introduces Spider-Man. So, um, how so? Other than Secret Avengers, well, I guess would you consider Dragon? I mean, Dragon and Tiger isn't necessarily a solo film, but I mean it's Iron Fist and Shang-Chi's film. So was it at all difficult to bring in other characters into these quote unquote solo films?
I think that certain characters that we've put in the films could have been done better. Like Sentry and Moon Knight 3 was just kind of there for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
But in this movie, I feel like both Doctor Strange and Spider-Man served a much more dynamic purpose that they needed to be there.
Right.
Because with the Heroes for Hire, it was set up as these young dudes, they're trying to, fight crime, but also make some money at the same time. And we know Spider-Man, he's poor, he's living with his aunt, he's young. It's something that he could also be a part of because they're all three the same, the same age, same experience, have the same amount of money, pretty much.
Yeah.
I feel like Spider-Man was the good choice for being the third member.
And so, this is... The movie came out 2 years into the YTMCU, correct? Like, so you've already been doing it for 2 years, right? At that point.
Yes.
So, what like, how different was it 2 years in when it comes to 1 year in, or even what it is now? Like, is there a significant difference, or is it just still like, we're hanging out and we're having fun, but we're also making a movie?
At the time, it was kind of crazy because we'd gotten all these new people, these new costumes. We were writing like high-end stories. We had new film equipment and everything, and it almost felt like at the time, that's kind of all we were doing was filming these movies, with nothing else really in between. Which, while yes, it was fun, at the same time, it kind of felt like that was the only reason we were there.
Just to make the film, there wasn't the enjoyment part, is what you mean?
There was, but it was kind of like a passing remark. Like, we'd make a couple jokes and laugh in between where we were going to film stuff.
Did it feel more like a chore, or was there still the passion there?
Oh no, we loved it. We loved it, but it almost felt like we had no free time to just sit around and talk and do stuff.
So yeah, I know what you mean.
So rather than being like a group of friends going out and hanging out, whatever, your hangout was making the movie.
Yeah, because I feel like certain people in the YTMCU, you could ask them, and they would agree the same thing I'm about to say, that we probably wouldn't be as good as friends if not for me making these movies.
Right.
Because we've had so many experiences just filming around.
Yeah.
We learn a lot about each other, with the struggles of filming, because dealing with the scripts and the weather and the timing, we learn a lot.
That's what I absolutely love about the amateur filmmaking process, is that when we did the coffee shop, Ben and I's intentions were just to make a fun show, and we failed miserably. But what we did end up doing is, I feel like that the four of us, that being me, Ben, Isaac, and Owen, we all ended up being like really close friends by the end of it, or closer friends than what we were before. And even though I don't really like what we've made, I look back fondly on making those because I just remember it so vividly, and how, you really bond together with the struggles of making a film, because at the end of the day, you have like your Stanley Kubricks out there who, is like very much so I everything I say goes and stuff. But filmmaking is definitely a collaborative process. And I feel like that when you do filmmaking with your friends, because problem solving thing, you end up becoming like really good friends. So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from with that.
It's definitely something I'm really glad that we did.
Mm-hmm. And you've done better than most people. Like, most people probably would have stopped by with a Winter Soldier,
Mm-hmm.
Which I think all of your films at least have 3-figure numbers when it comes to views, correct? Some of them are in the thousands.
It's surprising.
So it's not like you're just doing this for nothing. You obviously are bringing attention to it, that must be. I might be wrong, but that must be a motivation, right? Like, you're going to get a few hundred views Is that ever like is that ever a part of the equation? Just knowing that you're actually making something that's going to be viewed, or would you still make it?
I don't really think about the that kind of thing until after it's over, because at the time, we're doing it, and I'm like, this is fun. I'm expressing myself. We're having a good time. But until after it's over and published for a month or so, I don't think about success it creates.
Yeah.
So your one of your more interesting films is Sin Eater, and Sin Eater is a super niche character. So what about Sin Eater motivated?
We skipped the.
We skipped Flip the Coin. My bad. Straight up, man. Straight up, my bad. Let's talk about Flip the Coin.
I don't blame you for skipping it, to be honest.
I think that's the one I have not seen, actually.
I think I can't remember. I mean, it was over a year ago. If I had seen it, it was when it came out.
We probably should have done research.
I mean, I've seen like 80% of the movies, but
yeah.
I think the Flip the Coin is the one that I don't remember most about. I know that was it Punisher was introduced in it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I do remember the Punisher being introduced. What was that movie like? Since it was tackling a more comedic character, what was the process? How was the process different, rather?
This film was very complicated because in the beginning, I had not wrote a single page.
Before you were filming, hadn't, or do you mean like when you start? You filmed without a script?
Well, we had handed the script off to someone else to write it.
Oh, okay, all right.
So we didn't explain to them when it was going to be done, I suppose. So by the time we had started filming, he sent us in the script, and it was 4 pages long.
That's.
And so I'm looking at everybody, and I said, "This would take like 30 minutes."
Yeah.
What do we do?
Oh my gosh,
wow.
That's insane. That
must be that's like the worst case scenario. Is you pass somebody off the script.
Is.
It'd be one thing if he wrote a full script and it sucked. It's another thing if it's only 4 pages long.
It's 4 pages long.
That's
and the movie ended up
film.
making. Yeah, we actually still use the script.
Stretched it out.
It's 43 minutes long, but we still used it, man.
10 minutes per page.
Yeah.
How did you resolve that issue? Because it's obviously a massive issue.
It was at first it was kind of hard because of course you had these 4 scenes and there's no timeline. They're just there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I have to essentially write a whole new plot for this film on the spot.
Yeah, which is difficult because it's a comedy film. It's a typical comedy.
Yeah.
So it's like comedy takes time to write. You have to be spending a lot of time with the jokes.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's a bit easier because, I mean, just from looking at your Q&A videos, it seems like you and your friends have a good dynamic. So I'm sure that, like, I'm pretty confident there's probably a lot of improvised dialogue.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt.
Half the jokes were made up while we were just filming the scenes.
Right.
Yeah, that's how the coffee shop was for the most part. We actually had an episode that was completely improvised.
And that was their best one.
Yeah, and the last episode was going to be improvised, but Jeffrey deleted the entire episode.
Yeah, that's an entire other story, and we'll get into that later.
We'll tackle that.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. So back to Flip the Coin. You act like you don't enjoy the film, but why is that exactly?
I just feel like there's no direction. It just kind of is there because, like, when you're watching it, you're like, okay, this is enjoyable. Deadpool's cracking jokes, fourth wall breaks. Spider-Man's being Spider-Man. Then you have the Moon Knight and Punisher parts, and you're like, oh, this is surprising. Why is this in here? This is not funny at all. What the hell? And then you have the rest of the plot, which is like, Deadpool and Spider-Man team up to fight Taskmaster. Moon Knight is just casually fighting, and then Taskmaster shows up. And then Punisher is only there because he hates Deadpool and wants to kill him. So then they all kind of intervene at the end where they're like, 3 of these dudes are trying to fight Taskmaster. Punisher's trying to fight Deadpool. And so it's really funny to think about the dynamic, but at the same time, it's like, what is
kind of feels convoluted.
Yeah, what does this have to do with everything else going on in this film universe?
Right.
with only 4 pages of script, it must have been. It must have been pretty good.
Yeah.
Not a lot to go off of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
So,
yeah,
alright,
it
the
makes
question
sense,
has to be
the
asked.
issues.
The question has to be asked: has that person written a script since then, or has that person been "quote unquote" fired from these projects?
Well, no, they haven't finished the script since then.
They're actually still
I just had to
working on
ask
the
that. I had to
Deadpool.
ask that. I had to ask that.
I don't blame you. That's hilarious. But
1 page per year.
we've let them 1 page per year.
Yeah.
20 years, you got a full short film. So
Yeah.
Yo, fire.
Yeah. The last script
Yeah.
just says the end. The last page.
Oh my god.
yeah, the last year is just typing the end. So,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, back to your response.
So they were not really part of the YTMCU. The biggest thing they did, arguably I'd say, was they filmed a majority of the cinematography for the Secret Avengers film.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of the person is Dakota, so I'll just say that. Dakota was always the person
Dox
who
him.
ran-
Dox him.
Dox him.
Oh no!
Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm
What
just
does the
joking.
podcast become?
Yo, hit him with that L+ ratio.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we shouldn't dox people, Jeffrey. I always
My
have to
bad.
have this conversation with
Hit him up with that Sky Jackson kind of, you know.
All right. All right, enough with doxing. Go back to what you were saying.
Yeah.
So essentially, what they had done was film the majority of Secret Avengers.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, you're a pretty big film buff. You like Deadpool is like one of your favorite characters. So let's have you write the script. And they were like, okay, what's the story you're going for? And of course, I told them, 4 different characters. It's like a 3-way story, pretty much. And they're like, okay, I can do that. And so we let them write the script for about 4 months, which for us is usually a pretty good amount of time to write a script. And we come together for the filming, and we say, all right, send us the script. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, what?
Oh.
You got the script done, right? And he's like, I only have 4 pages of it. I'm like, you're what?
4 months, means one page per month.
1 page per
Which
month.
isn't as bad as the page per year, but it's still pretty
Yeah. He's improved.
Yes.
He
Still
improved.
not that great.
Yeah.
But we were like, okay, this is not cool, but we'll work with it, sadly. And so then, Deadpool comes out, we all watch it, and then he's like, man, this was not going to be anything like the finished product. And I was like, well, the finished product never happened.
Yeah. The finished product was 4 pages long. So
And so I'm like, okay, maybe we should not have you write a script again. And they're like, yeah, that's actually probably fair.
So has he done any more filming, like for other projects?
I do believe, if I remember correctly, Dakota did some filming for Sin Eater and Winter Soldier Part 2.
Gotcha.
I think that's kind of it.
Speaking of Sin
So,
Eater,
yeah, as I was saying before, he is a super niche character. Not very well known. Not only like he's not only like well known as in like he hasn't been adapted into any that I know, but also like he doesn't seem to be that well known in like the comic book community. Because when I saw your trailer for it a few years, or I guess last year, close to 2 years ago, I assumed that he was just like an original character. But I found out recently that he's a legit comic book character.
Huh.
So, how did you come across Sin Eater?
I'm gonna be totally honest with you. I forgot.
Fair enough.
did you read
Honestly,
the
I don't.
comics?
I just remember being like, man, I want to do a villain movie. But then I was like, I cycled through all these villains. And I'm like, man, all these characters suck.
Right.
So then I'm looking through villain story arcs, and I come across the death of Jean DeWolf, which is the comic where the Sin Eater is most known for.
Mhm.
And I'm like, man, I've been looking into this character, so I'm like, okay. Dude has a split personality where he becomes a shotgun-wielding serial killer. I'm like, that could be interesting because, of course, I had done Moon Knight, who had split personality disorder.
Right.
And I'm like, how can I make this different? Because I'm thinking to myself, this character literally almost nobody knows who this is.
Mhm.
Like, it's even worse than the Moon Knight Shang-Chi thing, because, like, nobody knows who this is.
Right.
And so I'm like, if I were to make a completely original story that has nothing to do with the comic characters' like actual story, nobody would care.
Yeah. Yeah, if you wanted to take creative liberties on anything, the character
Yeah.
would do so.
Which is it's essentially what ended up happening, because I had created this entirely new story.
Yeah.
Which I find it really strange that around the time I was making the Sin Eater film, there was a new Spider-Man comic that had was coming out that brought the Sin Eater back.
Dude, I'm telling you, Marvel.
And I was like, there is no way that it.
Dude.
I'm like, there's no way that just happened.
Kevin Feige's like that one SpongeBob meme. Write that down. Write that down.
Honestly, because like I'm writing this and like halfway through it, this new comic. I think it was called like Sin Rising. This Spider-Man comic was coming out. I'm like, what in the name of God?
They're
Right.
just copying you, man. That's what it is.
Yeah, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy this comic. And then
Was
like,
it good?
yeah, I think it was pretty good. I actually used some of the scenes from the comic to be part of the movie in the end.
Oh, sick.
So,
The scene where Sin Eater goes up on the rooftop and fights the 3 supervillains, and then Spider-Man comes in. That's straight out of the comic.
Hmm.
And then the scene where Spider-Man is sitting on the slide, which in the case of the comic, it was a rooftop, and they're talking, and Sin Eater's like, yo, I ain't just doing this for the lulz. I
Right.
truly believe I am God. And I stole that out of the comic, too.
That's a relatable moment, but
is it?
I
don't know about that.
I'm God.
happens to me every third Tuesday. But
Yeah, man.
So it's definitely a different style of film. How is that? Because obviously you just did a comedy, and now you're moving into more of a grimmer type of film. Is
Was
it
honestly
kind of
honestly
horror
like a horror
inspired.
film.
yeah, horror, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're doing these more genre forward films. Was that intentional to kind of like balance out the comedy, or was it just it ended up being that way?
I didn't really think I was doing it for like to balance out anything, but I knew that I wanted it to be horror.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I could not only do like a slasher film in a way, because of course the Sin Eater, serial killer with a shotgun, but at the same time, like I could explore the dichotomy of both relationships and the personalities, and make like a psychological horror thriller.
Yeah.
Which is what ended up being, which I really liked.
I also see. I noticed a trend that so Sin Eater has more of a what's it called? Well, okay, it has a different aspect ratio than the previous films, and I just looking at your films after Sin Eater, they kind of follow that same aspect ratio change. So, was like a particular reason as to why you wanted to change the aspect ratio?
I think when I made Sin Eater, I was like, I want this to be a very art house style film. So, of course, the film is longer. It uses more like orchestral and like more. I don't really know how to describe it because I'm not like a music person, but it uses more musical instruments and less like fighting music with like big drums and guitars, or in the case of Dragon Tiger, like rap music. But
yeah,
for this film, it was like slow drones, violins, different
more
types
suspenseful kind of stuff.
Yes, exactly. But I knew I wanted this to be like an art house horror film. So when I made it, I was like, let's put the film bars in here and see what that does to it.
Right.
And I had realized that it made it look, more like a film.
Oh yeah, definitely more cinematic.
Yeah, and it added to the experience because then the tension of it felt even bigger because now these characters are being pushed in this little box.
Right.
And you're seeing them from like a farther perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Now,
so like, that rose the tension of the story even more.
yeah. So, in the case of Sin Eater, what horror films inspired that?
I definitely feel like Jekyll and Hyde, of course, was a big thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, obviously, yeah.
For the character of the Sin Eater, like the way that he had acted, I kind of was going for like a Jason Voorhees style, like monster per se.
Right.
Because like the Sin Eater is not human; it is a demon that possesses the body of a man, and is like I'm indestructible, and all I want to do is kill, and you cannot stop me.
Hmm.
And that's essentially what Jason as a character was. So that was the inspiration for the Sin Eater's kind of function.
Right.
But at the same time, of course, you have Stanley, who is like the character between them is great because Stanley's like a super nice dude. He's a police officer, who wakes up, he's optimistic, he listens to friggin' Billy Joel.
Right.
And then out of nowhere, he is suddenly changed into a completely different person because of one thing from his past that had finally caught up to him.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so now you have this dude who's tormented by this creature living inside of his body that at any point could just be like, I'm going to go out and murder a bunch of people.
Mm.
And so now he's fighting his inner struggle to be like, what do I do? Because now all of my friends, they're not safe.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, you saw how that go with, Judge Rosenthal, his death scene. Was
Right.
a huge product of that whole shebang.
So redemption seems to be a pretty big theme throughout your films, with Moon Knight and Winter Soldier and whatnot. Is there is an intentional kind of thing, carrying around like similar themes throughout your films, or is it just like something that like a theme that you're just kind of drawn to, whether it's subconscious or something?
I feel almost as if the redemption aspect of these characters is somewhat reminiscent of my life.
Uh-huh.
Because for like the longest time in my life, I had no direction. I was, a pretty shitty person, to be fair.
Mhm.
But once I had finally, seen more of life and been more exposed to life, I wanted to be better. And so with these films, that was another way that I had, helped change my personality to be more of a better person. And so
Kind of therapeutic in a way.
yeah, it's cathartic because I'm writing these characters like Bucky and Moon Knight and Sin Eater, and even Daredevil to an extent. You'll see, being able to express, even though things have gone wrong, that things can always be better, and it is up to us to be better.
Mhm.
It almost feels like I wrote them as more of a life story than just a passion.
Right.
That's how a lot of writers write.
Oh, yeah.
They write really about themselves.
Mhm.
And even-
I think it
even
was
sometimes
Quentin
they don't want-
Tarantino.
Yeah, he's
Quentin Tarantino said, "Write a story that feels so personal that you're embarrassed to share it." I believe he said that.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
So
that's definitely. I want to kind of go off topic here, if that's cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's
You can go
100% okay.
Any direction.
I feel like the Moon Knight films are a perfect description of that whole story, because the Moon Knight story, it mirrors my life in a big way.
Mhm.
Because part one is it's the discovery that something isn't right, and that you're starting to understand that something isn't right. And then chapter two is, dealing with the problems that it presents, and then, trying to find a way to be better. And then chapter three is understanding who you are, and then being like, okay, I need to take this now essence of myself and do something better with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a big part of my journey as a man, almost,
Right.
is the Moon Knight films being my life.
Yeah. And I totally relate to what you said earlier about film being how you express yourself. Because me personally, I'm not like a super expressive person. Like, I'm not like super open, but I do like to put a lot of myself onto the page and then onto the screen. So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from there. And I feel like that even if the project doesn't end up going the way that you want to, I feel like that if you get your insecurities onto the page and then project it to the screen, it helps a lot, actually.
Yeah, it's exactly what my my movie I'm working on is about. Like the entire concept of the film is it's about like struggling young filmmakers. So not like college filmmakers, but like, filmmakers in like high school that like the just like the
People like us.
Yeah, like us. Like I think that's such a fascinating thing because like it doesn't really get talked about because most of the time people who are in our shoes don't go anywhere with it. So it's just like, I think those are like the cooler things that you can do in like low budget films is just be vulnerable and be authentic, which it definitely feels like that's pretty big part of the YTMCU. Is you guys are for sure authentic. If anything, that's like the best thing about your guys' films is they are very authentic, which is ironic because it's fan films.
Yeah.
But it's still they have a very specific personality. Let's take a quick break and then we'll finish off the last two films and have a little conclusion. So we'll be right back. So to go into this last segment, let's talk about which one was it? Winter Soldier 2. Winter Soldier 2, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That came out a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
it just recently turned a year old.
Hey!
Yeah. So
happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Winter Soldier 2, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan film, YTMCU. It has the official title. So this was
birth name.
Was it directed by you, this film?
Yep, I wrote the entire thing.
So yeah, written and directed by you. Which I feel like we should have clarified for most of them because was there one that wasn't directed by you that we've talked about yet?
Actually, a lot of these have been spread out to other people.
Oh, so it's just more like a co-directorial thing.
Yeah, because when it comes to Secret Avengers was co-directed by Dakota and Dalton. Of course, the Deadpool film was co-directed by Dakota because he had wrote 4 pages of script.
Yeah.
Right. He put a lot of effort into it.
That 4 pages changed it to your guys' life.
I will say a little something special about Dragon and Tiger 2, which is kind of how Brady even made 3. I said, Brady, are you really into this? And he was like, yeah, I really like this and I like the character. And I'm like, then you're going to direct the entire second film. So he directed the entirety of Dragon and Tiger 2. And then that's when I was like, okay, you're worthy. You could write part 3. And then after that, I'd pretty much handled everything up until Moon Knight 3.
Mm-hmm.
So specifically with Winter Soldier 2, what was there anything in particular that was different about this film? Because this is obviously at this point, what was it? It was your 10th point. Yeah, I think it was your 10th film, I believe. Yeah, so your 10th film, you're 10 films in. How different was it from the other films? Since it literally is more than most sagas at that point.
Well, I knew a big part of what I wanted to do with Winter Soldier 2 was kind of go back and fix what Winter Soldier 1 had done wrong.
I was actually going to ask that. What major improvements do you think there were between Winter Soldier and 2?
Well, I think one of the main things is the characters actually being able to express their stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because in part 1, you were just introduced to Bucky and Hawkeye and Crossbones out of nowhere with nothing.
Right.
But in this film, Bucky talks about his stories in the war, and Hawkeye talks about his experiences in S.H.I.E.L.D., and Zemo gets a lot more time as a villain to shine than Crossbones did. Because he explains his motivation, how he does what he does, and why he's here to fight, Bucky.
Mm-hmm. So what would you? All right. So what would you say is? So you the first Winter Soldier film, the first Winter Soldier film. I'm slurring my words. I drank seltzer water, so I'm probably getting drunk. But
that's how that works.
That's how it works. Yep. The first Winter Soldier film was 16 minutes 43 seconds, whereas the second one is an hour and 4 minutes.
And 12 seconds.
So, and 12 seconds. My bad. I straight up forgot to add that.
Don't forget them 12 seconds.
The 12 seconds are vital. About as vital as 4 pages of a screenplay. I can't get over that. That's hilarious. I'm so sorry to the guy who wrote that. I'm sorry for profusely making fun of you, but that's funny.
Clowning on him.
Listen,
that's
all right,
hilarious.
It's not our fault that he only wrote 4 pages to a full-length script. Because at this point, you guys are making hour-long films. This is not the 12-minute long films that you guys are making. This is a full-length film. 4 pages.
4 pages. Oh my gosh.
Okay, all right. We keep getting. So we gotta stop derailing this. Go back to your original thought.
So do you think that the film was overall better because it was longer than the original?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the time frame that we had here was much better.
Mm-hmm.
We got more time to express the characters. We got more time to show off action sequences and backstory, and the soundtrack was much cooler.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I liked about the films that came after it was kind of injected into this one. Like the soundtrack, I like aesthetic soundtracks because, of course, with Dragon and Tiger, you have the street rap music and like some bits of Asian music because, of course, that's the characters. And
Right.
for Moon Knight, you have like darker, more grunge rock because that's kind of how his character is.
Yeah.
And then with Sin Eater, you have the orchestral violin scratch.
Yeah.
But
because
for this one, of course, it's a film about two government agents, who are part of this giant organization, but are also, from the past. So not only do you get that when during the fight scenes, you get like the tactical warfare,
Mhm.
this kind of music, but when they're just chilling, you get songs from like the classic age of rock, like Elvis and the Rolling Stones, because that's of course the kind of music that would have been around when Bucky was at his heyday.
Right.
Which I think was a fun part of creating the script was me and Cole, the Winter Soldier actor, we had sat down and been like, we should make a soundtrack for this movie. And then we ended up, spending a couple hours just going through songs and being like, which songs would be the best for these fight scenes or these dialogue scenes?
Mhm.
And it ended up coming out super nicely.
That kind of leads me to a question. YouTube, all of your films are available on YouTube, and I guess the YT MCU, go subscribe to them, show them some support and whatnot. But YouTube isn't really that fair to creators when it comes to like showing music and stuff. Have you had any problems with that?
Yes, multiple times actually. When we were making Moon Knight Chapter 2, I had to refilm an entire scene because the song in the background was unavailable in the United States.
Mm. Yeah, I did notice, like in a lot of your films, like you had like Godsmack and one of your Moon Knight films, and just like a lot of licensed music. So I've always wondered if that's just been a struggle for you with YouTube and its guidelines and whatnot.
I'm surprised it's as relaxed as it is because we have literally so many songs that have copyright.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it's strange that like YouTube would even care because you guys are making fan films. You obviously don't like intend on making a living off of this. So like what's the point of them getting all angry when you're not even trying to make money off of it? In the
Yeah.
first place?
Yeah, right.
Like what happened to
we don't
fair
have
use?
monetization.
All right, wait. So the next film, which I feel like we should probably get back into that to wrap it up.
Yeah.
There's one more film to talk about. Well, technically two, but that'll be after. So Moon Knight Chapter 3, you finished a trilogy that took 3 years to make, right? 3 years was the first one? Yeah, 3 years ago. So, what was that like? Like you finished a trilogy. How did you feel going into that? Like did you feel like accomplished, or did you feel like the story was actually wrapped up properly?
I definitely am the most proud of Moon Knight Chapter 3 out of any film we've ever made.
Mm.
It's also your most
Because-
successful.
Yeah, it has the most views out of all of them.
Yeah.
Which
Also
is
longest.
something that. Yeah, it's like more than 2 hours long. It has 5,000 views.
5.6
Over 5,000
yeah.
views. Yeah.
It's just crazy to me because we had been making, Moon Knight, which was my favorite character. Of course, the character I had done a lot of personal things with for so long that it was like, this is the end of Moon Knight's solo story.
Mhm.
So when I had made everything and I had gotten, the multiple villains, the Marlene plot, the Moon Knight finally figuring out who he is, and then of course the ending scene with Khonshu and Mark talking and him being like, what do I do now? And he's like, whatever happens next is your journey. And it's the first time I'd ever cried out of satisfaction at the end of a YTMCU film.
I mean, no doubt. I don't blame you because, I mean, to make a legit trilogy, like this isn't like, 3 5-minute backyard videos. I mean, this is like, I mean, to an extent, legit films. You know, like you've accomplished more than than the Percy Jackson movies. You know, in that you've completed a saga.
Which, to be fair,
You know?
doing more than the Percy Jackson films isn't too hard. But
True, that's true.
But
Yeah.
still, I mean, a trilogy on YouTube, that does not happen. That simply is unheard of. So good on you for sure. So once you wrap up a trilogy, and also it's your most popular film, and your longest film, how do you go into your next project, which is Daredevil? Well, actually,
Which I'm actually looking forward to.
It's Moon Knight Chapter 4. Actually,
Yeah.
It kind of is, honestly.
Wait, let me look at Moon Knight Chapter.
You should get rid of the April Fool's thing. It's just like,
Yeah,
no way,
just keep
another
it
one.
there. Oh my gosh, they're continuing it, and it's just
So Daredevil, which comes out in
That
a
was
few
the best
days.
moment of my
2 days actually. Well, actually more
Yeah.
like 1 day because it's
Yeah.
it's about to be you get the point. It's coming out in a few days. How was that filming different because you just finished a trilogy, or was it different at all, or did it just feel like you were picking up from where you left off? Or it was also a 9-year gap, or a 9-month gap.
9 year.
9 years later, we're back.
yeah, and we got 9 pages of a screenplay. So
So 9 months later, at this point you finish a trilogy. How is it different going into Daredevil?
It honestly, in the beginning, it kind of felt like a whole, what's the point? Because we had done Moon Knight 3, which was like our magnum opus. It was our hugest project, our hugest project. It had everything I was looking for. It was the climax that I wanted. And honestly, we were talking to everybody, and I was like, if we didn't have enough time, this would be the end.
Mhm.
This would be the ending. And I'm thinking about it because at the time I'm like, we have enough time for like 4 more movies. And so I'm saying, okay, what comes next? And actually, the Daredevil film is a product of a gamble that Brady and I had made. Because he's writing Dragon and Tiger 3. And of course, what you like about part 2 of Dragon and Tiger, the Spider-Man stuff, the aesthetic, the fight scenes.
right.
Think of that like times 10. There's much more of it. There's a lot of, cool, badass moments of Spider-Man doing Spider-Man stuff, and Iron Fist using his powers and Shang using his. And I'm like, how could we make this better? Because it introduces characters from like the Hand and more like deep organizations. So I'm like, hey Brady, do you think we could put Daredevil in this movie? And he's like, absolutely not. And I was like, I begged him for days because Daredevil is like one of my favorite characters that isn't Moon Knight.
Yeah, mine too. He's one of my favorites.
Honestly, how could you not love him? He's so cool.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, Brady, what do I have to do for you to put Daredevil into Dragon and Tiger 3's fight scenes? Because, of course, Ben can tell you I have a good background in fighting.
Yeah,
and
his father was a boxer as well, so it's like even close. Because obviously you've been doing the martial art style of fighting in your films, but a boxing, forward style, which is inherently going to happen because it's Daredevil. I could definitely see why you would want to do that.
Right.
It was a lot easier for me to choreograph Daredevil scenes than it was for like Iron Fist.
Right.
Because like I'm a boxer, so obviously I'm looking at Daredevil and I'm in the role of the character, and I'm like, this is so easy. All I got to do is throw some punches, you do a little bit of easy kicks, some grappling. But I'm looking at Dragon and Tiger. I'm like, these dudes are doing like Wing Chun, Tai Chi, Aikido stuff. Like I don't know anything about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, Brady, I want there to be a mix of characters, fighting, because of course you have Iron Fist powers and Shang's like martial arts skills. But I want something more simple that also connects. So of course I'm like, let's get Daredevil. And he's like, I'm only going to put Daredevil in the movie if you make a movie about him first. Because he brought it up. He's like, I don't want there to be another Sentry situation where we bring in a character to do a role that has never been a part of these films, and everyone is like, he shoehorned it.
Right.
And I was like, so what you're saying is you want me to make a movie about this character just so we can put Daredevil in Dragon Tiger 3?
Huh.
And he was like, yes. If you don't make a movie about him first, I'm not putting him in. So then the next 3 months I spent writing a Daredevil script, right?
Mm.
So
Which,
I saw the
honestly,
stills
it's
a
funny.
couple months ago, right? You know, it was like more like a month ago, right? You had stills already released.
Yes.
Yeah, that was after what you guys released something on or posted something on Instagram, then the stills came out. How long between, because obviously there's the 9-month gap between your last film and this film. How long after you finished the script did you begin filming? Because I saw the stills and I thought that was more like you're pitching it to us, but I didn't know that like it meant like, oh, by the way, we're doing this film. So how long did that take? How long was that process? Because you know, now you kind of have to do it if you want this guy to be in this next movie, and there's you know there's more of a time restraint. So how did you go about doing that, or how long?
Well, it didn't take too long because like after I realized, you know, Moon Knight 3 is done, but we have more time, so I don't need to be burnt out because there's more to this, you know, these movies. So I'm gonna make this. And so I start filming Daredevil. I get Jack Mack to be Kingpin. I get Dakota to be Bullseye. I get, you know, all these different people. And I'm like, okay, let's start this up. So we filmed this movie for about 4 months. So it's about 5 months after Moon Knight 3 when we first started filming it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're making this movie. And the whole time I'm thinking, all this just for a couple fight scenes in a movie. But I'll tell you something, because the movie comes out in 2 days. I'm sure both of you are going to see it, and then maybe we'll have a conversation about that afterwards. But
I definitely think a follow-up episode when you guys complete the saga would be
for sure.
pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I would definitely be down for that.
I'm interested to hear. So you said that you wrote the Daredevil script in 3 months?
4.
4 months. Okay. So, and I'm looking at your page right now. It says Daredevil Part 1. So is that script Daredevil Part 1, or did you split that script into different parts?
Well, originally it was supposed to be one big script, but then I was like, this is Daredevil, you know, he's got a huge character, so like I can at least do 2, maybe 3 parts. So I have a whole story planned out, but with my time constraint, I feel like Daredevil Part 1 might be the only one that happens.
Okay.
But I'm kind of hoping for the other 2 to be able to happen.
So you're planning on making it a trilogy? Or
Yeah.
you're hoping to make it a trilogy, I should say.
Yes, that would definitely be a big goal of mine, is to have another trilogy. Because that would be the third. That would be the third trilogy. Because you'd have the Moon Knight trilogy, the Iron Fist trilogy, and then the Daredevil trilogy.
Mm-hmm. So okay, so with Daredevil, how much were you inspired by the show? Because I mean, you can't be a fan of Daredevil and not watch the show, which is
only watch the movie.
The 2003 movie is his only inspiration. No,
That's
I mean,
terrific.
The show, I mean, it's honestly a masterpiece. I mean, let's all be honest with ourselves. Season 2 is a bit shaky, but even then, I would consider the show a masterpiece. So, how much did you take inspiration from the show?
I'm going to be totally honest right now. I ripped several scenes from the show.
Hey, I would. I mean, you can't. Don't fix what's broken. You know. I mean.
Yeah, because like there are some scenes with Foggy and Matt talking where you listen to the scenes from the show and then the scenes from this movie side by side, and you're almost like, this is the same thing.
Right.
But of course, you know, I have to change it up because it would be slander.
Right. Yeah. Did you take any inspiration from like the visual style of Daredevil? Because minus season 3, seasons 1 and 2 kind of have like this neon kind of lighting and this like neon look. Did you take any inspiration from that and put that into your film?
I definitely feel like the visuals was probably the most lacking part of our film.
Mm-hmm.
because it kind of looks like a less, well, actually, a more watered down version of Moon Knight 3.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no like interesting cinematography, there's no like filters or like super interesting visuals. It's just kind of surface level.
Right.
Which is not like terrible.
Oh yeah, it's never a bad thing, because sometimes if you take away the visuals, it can really, like, the writing shines a lot with stuff like that.
Yeah, because as I addressed earlier with like Winter Soldier and the Deadpool film,
Mhm.
if the filters on them weren't so heavy, they probably would have been better to look at.
Right.
So I feel like this movie, it not having filters was probably a better thing.
Yeah, because sometimes, you know, less is more, especially when it comes to visual things, just in general. You know, like, the sometimes if you add too many, like, qualities to your, you know, picture, it kind of just becomes distorted and then distracting. But I totally get what you mean, where it's more like just baseline. Like, it's not, you're not doing anything like extra. Like filters, for instance. Filters are tricky because, you know, obviously without professional color grading, filters are kind of, they're either very, like, they're okay or they're very bad. So it's always a gamble with those. But
oh yeah.
Yeah, because like you're looking at a film like, I don't know, Moon Knight 2 or 3, and you're like, man, the visuals in this are like really nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at a film like Winter Soldier or Deadpool 2 or the Deadpool, and you're like, man, this is disgusting.
Yeah, not all filters are made equally. Let's just put it
Yeah.
that way.
100%.
Yes, that's the way to put it.
Yeah, 100%.
So or go ahead.
You go ahead.
No,
You know,
fine.
Ben,
I'll go.
I'm gonna
I'll
let
go
you have
ahead.
this one.
All right,
I'll let you have this one.
I'll take this one.
Oh my god.
So, you know, I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead. I had a great point, and it was just stolen from me.
So, just going through your account, you seem like with your like, I'm looking at specifically your Sin Eater and your Moon Knight Chapter 3 trailer and your Daredevil trailer. Like, you put like a lot of effort, it seems like, into your thumbnails. What's your like process when it comes to making those? Because especially the Sin Eater one, I really like.
I think it kind of all just goes off of, you know, if I'm making it and I'm saying this looks both interesting and cool at the same time.
Right.
Because like some thumbnails, they're a little basic. Like the Moon Knight Chapter 1, the Dragon and Tiger, and the Winter Soldier, the first three, their thumbnails are really boring.
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at like Moon Knight Chapter 3, Sin Eater, you know, Secret Avengers, and you're like, okay, these are cooler. And then the Daredevil thumbnail is probably one of my favorite ones because it's simple, but it's intriguing.
Right.
Because it's just the reflection of, you know, Matt and the Daredevil, you know, back and forth.
Right.
There's no like title. It's not saying Daredevil film. It's just him.
Right.
Because and that's another thing I liked about the Moon Knight 3 is it doesn't say like film. It's got him and it's got his two other personalities, Jake and Steven.
Yeah, it looks like a professionally made poster.
Yes.
So back to Daredevil real quick. Because it is, how long is that film going to be?
53 minutes.
That's, so it's still technically a feature. You guys are still staying on that.
It's definitely not our longest, but it's not the shortest.
Yeah.
So all right. This is a joke, by the way. Just so I sometimes have to, because a lot of people can't tell. But I am willing to audition for Kingpin in case like your actor like stubbed his toe or something and can't come in the next day. I can totally audition for Kingpin if you'd like. I'll shave my head. I'm like already a big guy, but I'll put on weight if need be. So
I'll put on 300 more pounds.
I'll put on 300 pounds.
Shave my head.
Shave my head.
Yeah.
I will like
Hey, listen,
nonstop
man,
watch Vincent D'Onofrio's performance
he already has a
Kingpin.
bunch of acting experience, man. He acted in The Coffee Shop, so
Yeah, have you ever seen that masterpiece? I was in it. That was me.
Hey, he did star in a movie, which is nyctophobic, but
Yes.
there wasn't a whole lot of lines there, so you're gonna have to teach him how to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, because like whenever there's actually like tons of in-depth dialogue in that film, and whenever Ben hit record, I kind of just like went blank. So it was strange.
It was
but,
I mean, it was a good time. It was just like filming
Yeah.
that movie was literally nothing how I expected it to go. Which honestly, it ended up being pretty good. But
yeah, easily our best project.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I actually watched it the other day.
yeah. Compared to The Coffee Shop, it definitely is an improvement.
Yeah.
And we're like, Talldale is gonna be 10 times better than Nyctophobic. So, but just kind of how your guys' progression has gone. The first film being Moon Knight Chapter 1, it was an okay thing, and then you get to Moon Knight Chapter 3, and it's 2 hours and 13 minutes, 6,000 views pretty much, and you spend a lot of time writing a script. You get an actual full ensemble cast. I mean, it feels you could see the progress, which it kind of it's practice equals progress, which is very true when it comes to film. Because there's no other way to get good at making movies besides getting to actually make movies.
Right.
But sorry. So we gotta wrap this up, or this is gonna be a 4-hour long episode.
The Snyder cut of podcasts.
Yeah. So obviously everybody should go check out Daredevil. It's coming out the 16th. This is gonna come out on the 15th or 14th. It just depends whenever I upload it. So yeah, check that out. Do you have any resolving remarks before we end this show? Alex?
Definitely something I want to say. When you go to the YTMCU, go to playlists and then go to fan films, because I've had way too many people lately watch Moon Knight 3 before anything else and then ask me what's going on.
Yeah, you should probably watch the trilogy.
Yeah, you should probably when something says Chapter 3, you should probably not. Yeah, you need to rewind a little bit.
Literally what I'm saying.
Maybe
I'm
don't start at the third one.
Yeah, that's like watching. It's like watching Return of the King to start the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's insane.
Yeah.
Star Wars Episode 9 is your first
Yeah.
Star Wars movie. I want to skip to the end.
I am super lost right now. What the heck?
Why is this movie so mediocre?
Somebody was literally like, who's this Bushman guy? Who's this Marlene character? Who are these other dudes? I'm like, there are 2 other films that explain where these characters come from.
Not just 2 other films. There's an entire saga before that. Like like 9 movies is generally a saga because it's 3 trilogies. So
because
it's over a saga at that point.
Yeah, because I've done my math here. Moon Knight is in 7 movies.
Yeah, it's kind of a build up there that they're missing.
There's a lot of character growth that you have to get before you get to Chapter 3.
Yeah,
right.
A little bit. All right. Well, thank you, Alex Looman, for coming on. It was good to have you. It was a fun discussion. Like I said before, everybody go check out his stuff. It's always good to check out independent filmmakers, especially if you live in our area. It's not every day that you meet fellow filmmakers.
Oh yeah, the filmmaking pool here is super small.
Yeah, it's like maybe like 4 people in the entire state who are passionate about film,
and 3 of them are on this podcast right now.
So I hope you guys enjoyed, and don't forget to tune in for every other episode that comes out after this. If you don't, then you might die. So goodbye.
Yeah.